rules for order of operation for this evening. First of all, we would ask that all public participants keep their microphones muted unless they are called upon to speak. There are two parts of our meeting that we allow for public question or comment. They are the hearing of visitors part 1 and hearing of visitors part 2. Hearing of visitors part 1 occurs at the beginning of the meeting and is for questions or comments relating to items on tonight's agenda. And hearing of visitors part 2 occurs near the end of the meeting and is for questions or comments relating to items that are not on tonight's agenda. When we reach those parts of the meeting, if you have a comment or a question, we ask you to use the chat window. Include your name with a brief description of what your comment or question relates to. The meeting monitor will review the list and call on individuals in the order received to unmute their microphone and provide their question or comment. We ask that you be respectful while speaking and observe a 2-minute time limit for your question or comment. If at any time during the meeting, the rules or proper protocol for a public meeting are not being followed, you will be removed from the meeting. I'd like to announce also that prior to our meeting this evening, there was an executive session held at 6:30 to discuss personnel and legal issues. And at this time, we're going to do our flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, Mrs. Brahowski, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Mrs. Kozar.
Here.
Mr. Locascio.
Here.
Mrs. Maines. Mrs. Maines. Mr. McCommons.
Here.
Mr. Music.
Here.
Mr. Palmer. Mr. Palmer.
Here. Here.
Mrs. Sarath.
Here.
Dr. Zorch.
Virtually present.
And let's try Mrs. Maines again. We'll see if she rejoins. She was here earlier. Okay.
Thank you. It has become a tradition with Dr. Zorch as board president that he begin each meeting with a quote. So at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Zorch, Dr. Zorch, excuse me.
Thanks, Mr. Locascio. These are really crazy times, and I pray that you're all staying safe and healthy, and times for lots of reflection right now, because we do have time with our families and our friends, and hopefully we're making the best of it. I have one quote here from Oscar Wilde, who people know was a famous American author. And his quote is, "We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars." And the other quote I have is from Bill Keane, who is the writer of the comic strip Family Circle. I think everybody's seen the Family Circle. It's been in the newspapers for probably as long as I've been alive. And he says, yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift of God, which is why we call it the present. I pray that you all stay safe and healthy. We will get over this, and we will keep looking at the stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zorch. Okay, at this time, we'll have the hearing of visitors part 1. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak about any item on our agenda tonight. There will also be time at the end of the meeting to discuss any other concerns. I want to also mention, also for the record, Mrs. Maines, if we could get you to acknowledge that you are here. Okay, at this time, we will continue with hearing of visitors part 1. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the board? Mrs. Maines, are you here?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Can
Okay,
you hear me?
yes, thank you. We are back to hearing of visitors part 1. Anyone who wishes to speak on anything that is on the agenda, please keep in mind we have a 2-minute limit to this evening. Okay, hearing no visitors, we're ready to proceed further. Just for some housekeeping details, we're trying to keep track of everyone who's here. So who's ever got the number that has area code 724 and the last 2 digits are 22, could you please identify who you are so that we can record who's at the meeting? Thank you.
If you're on the phone, you can *6 to unmute yourself, and that way we'll be able to hear what you're saying. So the person with the extension ending in 22, could you hit *6 on your phone and tell us who you are?
Jeff Himmler with the Tribune Review.
Thank you. Okay, then at this time, I'm going to move for the adoption of Resolution 212, the approval of the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. At this time, we're going to go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Tepper.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Again, as Mr. Locascio said, this is definitely a first, but I am thrilled to have so many participants this evening. I would just like to give some updates. A lot of these updates have been listed on our district website as well as Facebook and Twitter. But if we could just go back on the announcement on March 13th when schools were closed by the governor, at that point in time, we had already had a plan in place, but we continued with a plan. And just to review that, we did hold 2 virtual Act 80 days for our teachers for professional development and to give them some time to prepare their online instruction activities. Along with that, on March 19th, then our students were engaged in online instruction. I'd like to thank all of our teachers, our Greater Latrobe Education Association, support staff, parents, guardians, our technology department, our nurses, our counselors, our Board of Education, and pretty much our entire school community for being patient with us and having this transition be pretty seamless for the most part. I would also like to thank our food service staff and Jillian Malloy, who provide breakfast and lunches to our families, and those started actually on March 17th. There wasn't too much downtime with that as well. Also, a big thank you to our custodians and maintenance, maintenance for maintaining the buildings, and the custodians for thoroughly cleaning, and for Mr. Thomas leading that charge. Most of all, thank you to my administrative team, which includes principals, central office administrators, my secretarial staff at the buildings, as well as central office, for giving everybody their time and their energy to make certain that our students remain number one through this crisis. I would also like to thank our Board of Education, who has been nothing but supportive and has encouraged us to continue to provide the best instruction possible for our students. So I thank you to them as well. As you're aware, school is closed for the remaining of the school year. However, plans have been made, which had been posted, for backups for graduation and backup for our senior spectacular from our prom date that had to be canceled. Our May 8th day, which was to be an Act 80 day during the prom, will be changed this evening on our calendar when it is improved for an instructional day. So with that being said, we will be in a situation where we have not missed one day of instruction for our students because our virtual Act 80 days count as instruction as well. Plans are continuing to be made for distribution of materials that students may have left in our school buildings, as well as pickup of yearbooks and other items as well. Those continue. We are waiting, obviously, for more guidance from the state pertaining to when the stay-at-home order is lifted on May 8th and the number of individuals we're permitted to have in our buildings to do this. But please just be patient. I will continue to update everybody through our One Call Now system, as well as our district website and Facebook and Twitter. So with that being said, again, I thank everybody for their patience. I'm so proud to be part of Greater Latrobe School District and the Greater Latrobe School community. Thank you very much. With that being said, I would like to ask the board to please move on resolution number 213 to temporarily suspend board policies due to the pandemic.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Dr. Tepper, could you please elaborate just a little bit as to why we're doing this?
Absolutely. So one of the board policies talks about virtual meetings and the fact in the past with virtual meetings, you had to have the majority of the board physically in a space meeting. Pennsylvania School Board Association had stated any policies that deal with the pandemic, you need to suspend. So obviously we're in a virtual setting right now. Also, reporting of student progress. In the reporting of student progress, discussing different standards with our elementary grade reports and with class rank, more so not about class rank, but about our grading system, the A, B, C, D, F system that we changed to pass-fail for the third quarter and the finals. So those are the policies that we are asking to suspend during this pandemic.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. We'll now go to the solicitor's report with Mr. Nichols.
No report, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to education and planning. Mr. Poremka, do you have the enrollment report? Mrs. Maines?
I
Do you
did.
want to
I
do
have
the
it.
education and planning? Yeah, I do, but Mrs. Maines is here. So go ahead, Mr. Poremka.
The enrollment report is attached for your review. I did just want to touch base with everyone regarding kindergarten numbers. We are at a total of 180 incoming kindergartners enrolled and that is very evenly split throughout the 3 elementary schools. I would just remind folks that kindergarten registration is ongoing even through the pandemic, and with our buildings being shut down, you can go to our website and do the enrollment process. One thing, though, that we have put somewhat on hold that I would also talk about is our kindergarten screening process. So if you have enrolled a child and you were wondering about the screening process, we are going to start 2 parts of that process virtually this week and next, and that would be contact from the school nurse and the school counselor. And then the other part of the screening process we'll do once we are back up and running and social distancing guidelines have been relaxed. So please continue to register if you have a child coming of age, and you can do that through our website. That's all. Sorry, Mr. Locascio, I was having a little technical difficulty there.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Premka. Mrs. Maines, would you like to continue with the education and planning? Education and planning.
Yes, I would. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm having difficulty with mine also. So, thank you for doing the enrollment report, Mr. Paremka. I need to move for adoption resolutions number 214, 215, and 216. I'm going to bundle.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? That motion passes. That motion passes.
Got quite an echo going, guys.
Okay, I'm going to make the motion that we approve resolution number 217 to approve changes to the 219-220 school calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Steve, I'm back, if you can hear me.
Okay, we just voted on 217. So you have one other thing to take care of.
Okay. Attached for your information is the Greater Latrobe School District Special Education Plan. This is a 3-year plan. It runs from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023. I reviewed the plan. I thought it was very, very well thought out and done. And I'm very happy to ask for its approval. Very happy to ask you to read it over and see what that is. That's only for your information. Okay.
Thank you.
And the next committee meeting is to be determined. And if I could have one more minute, I'd just like to give a shout out to Tracy Trotter in the Latrobe Memorial Adams Memorial Library. I'm your representative on that board, and Tracy sent some really good news this week. She and her staff have been working diligently to really add to the online and virtual happenings at the library, and they've been very well received, and they've been doing an excellent job providing activities for students and some things that teachers could use in their lesson plans. And so I thank Tracy and her staff and give them some kudos for that. So check out the library either on Facebook or the website. Thank you, Mr. Locascio.
Thank you, Mrs. Maines. We'll now go on to finance. Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Mr. Locascio. On the agenda for your approval this evening is the treasurer's report. I make a motion to accept that report.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving resolution 218, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Also, I move for adoption of resolution number 219, which is a payment of bills.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
Also, I'd like to move for adoption of resolution number 220, which I think is worthy of mentioning of gifts, grants, and donations. One being Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Mobile Science and Math Education Programs Grant. Our second is the Greater Latrobe Education Association contribution to the COVID-19 food service operations. And also thirdly, an anonymous donation of $300 to the COVID-19 Family Assistance Emergency Fund. I move for adoption of those, that resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
Our next Finance Committee meeting date will be May 19th at 5:30 p.m. It will also be virtual and online. Thank you, Mr. Casio.
Correction on that date. What will that be again? May 19th?
May 19th, yes.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll go to Facilities, Operations, and Planning with Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Casio. I ask the board to approve resolution number 221 for the Westmoreland County Intermediate Unit Early Intervention Lease Agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of Resolution 221, please say aye.
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 We're also
Opposed? That motion carries. Go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
Thank you. I would also ask the board to approve resolution number 22, award for 2021 custom electrical and fall sports equipment and supplies.
Second.
Well,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of passing Resolution 222, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
and lastly, I'd like the board to approve resolution number 223, approve some projects and permission to seek quotes and or bids.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? I'd like to make one comment on this one. This is just simply getting quotes and or bid. It's not necessarily signifying that any of these or all of these will be done. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of passing Resolution 223, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries.
And the next Facilities, Operations, and Planning Committee meeting will be Thursday, May 7th, at 3:30 p.m. at the administration. It'll be a virtual meeting. And that's all I have, Mr. LaCasio.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Under Student Activities and Recreation, all we have to report is that the next Athletic Committee meeting will be on Wednesday, May 6th at 3 o'clock. It'll be at the Senior High School Conference Room and will be done virtually. We're now moving on to Community Relations with Mrs. Maines.
Thank you, Mr. LaCasio. The Greater Latrobe, the Latrobe GLSD Parks and Recreation Committee meeting minutes from April the 10th are attached. And the next committee, Parks and Rec Committee meeting, will be Thursday, May 21st at 4 p.m. In the Latrobe Municipal Building or a virtual meeting, depending on the situation.
Thank you, Mrs. Maines. Mrs.
Thank
Maines,
you.
if you could continue with the Westmoreland Intermediate Unit.
I will. I move for adoption of resolution number 224, the award of multi-purpose paper bid through the WIU consortium. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are any questions or comments? Okay, at this time, we'll have a roll call vote. Mrs. Prohaski?
Are you there?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mrs. Kozer? Is Mrs. Kozer still on?
Yes, you're still on.
Her microphone is muted.
Continue and we'll go back to her.
Okay. Mrs. Main,
Yes.
Mr. McCommons,
Yes.
Mr. Music,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sarath,
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Zorch, Mr. Hauser, Mr. LaCasio,
Yes,
Mrs. Kozer. Yes. Okay, that passes 9-9.
thank you. Mrs. Maines, continue, please.
Okay. The next WIU committee meeting will be held on April 28th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the, it'll be a virtual meeting, but it will come from the WIU building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll do the EWCTC Joint Operating Committee. Mrs. Kozar.
Can you hear me now, Steve?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I move for the adoption of resolution number 225 to approve the EWCTC 2021 operating budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? Once again, this will be a roll call vote in passing resolution 225. Mrs. Prohaska?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. McCommons,
Yes.
Mr. Music,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mrs. Sarath,
Yes.
Dr. Zorch,
Yes.
Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mrs. Kozer,
Yes.
Mrs. Maines,
Yes.
Mr. LaCasio.
Yes.
That passes 9 votes.
Thank you. Mrs. Kozar, if you could continue, please.
Yes. The Joint Operating Committee March 25th meeting minutes are an attachment in your agenda, and our next operating committee meeting, the Joint Operating Committee meeting, will be tomorrow at 6 p.m. at EWCTC. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr.
That
Zorch.
completes my report.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Dr. Zorch, Board Policy. Dr. Zorch will need to unmute.
I ask the board to approve resolution 226, notice of intent to adopt board policies. And they're listed at the bottom. They're all in attachments. Basically, they're all updates only, and this will be the last reading. The next meeting, we will ask the board to approve them. So,
Second.
We have a motion and a second on resolution 226. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of passing resolution 226, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. Next, we'll move to technology with Mr. Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Lacasio. Report, however, we are determined the next date for the next technology meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll turn it over to Dr. Pepper for the superintendent's recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Lacasio. I would like the board to please request the board to move on resolution number 227 to approve resignations. Ronald Reno, a teacher for retirement purposes, and Teresa Johnson for personal reasons. I just would like to thank both individuals for their service to Greater Latrobe and wish them all the very best.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to pass resolution 227. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
And under other business, just a reminder that statement of financial interest are due May 1st. We will continue our board meeting dates. Virtual meetings will be held until further notice. And again, please see glsd.us for instructions. All committee of the whole meetings will be canceled until further notice. Our regular board meeting will be virtual, Tuesday, May 19th, again at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have hearing of visitors part 2. Once again, a reminder that if you have a comment or question, we ask you to use the chat window. Include your name with a brief description of what your comment or question relates to. The meeting monitor will review the list and call on individuals in the order received to unmute their microphone and provide their question or comment. So at this time, hearing of visitors part 2. All right, at this time, it seems that there are no one who wishes to speak regarding the hearing of visitors part 2. I'd like to thank everyone for their patience for this evening. I know this was certainly different. And at this time, I make ask for a passage of resolution 228 to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Goodbye.
Opposed? That motion passes. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Please be safe.
Goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank